Good morning, students. Now, in this video, we are going to study about the respiratory organs, the different parts in the body which help us in breathing. So, the various organs are nose, as you can see here, nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and lung. So, one by one, we will study about them. First, we are going to deal with the nose. Now, the external part of nose, it bears two openings called as nostrils, and internally number of hairs, minute hairs are present in it, which prevent the dust particles entering inside our respiratory tract. So the two nostrils open into a pair of nasal chambers. The cavities, they are called as nasal chambers. So three main functions these nasal chambers will perform. So these are important. You can underline them. First is it warms the air as it passes over. It adds moisture to the air and traps harmful particles. So always we are advised to breathe through the nose instead of the mouth. Apart from this, our nose also helps in smelling. Now next part, nose, it leads to the next organ of the respiratory tract, that is the pharynx. The nasal chambers open into a back wide cavity called as pharynx. Spelling is important, which is situated at the back of the mouth. Here you can see in the diagram also the nose, and then comes your pharynx just behind the nasal chambers, continuous to the nasal chamber behind your mouth. Now next is, it is a common passage for air and food. It leads into an air tube, the trachea, and further it is divided into another tube which is called as esophagus, which we studied in our digestive system. When it is not in use, the food tube is partially collapsed, that is closed, as its soft walls, and the entrance of trachea is guarded by a flap-like structure called as epiglottis. Mark this point. The entrance of trachea, it is covered by a flap-like structure, as you can see here in the diagram also. The trachea here, after pharynx, it is covered with a membrane which is called as epiglottis. So incomplete closure of epiglottis during swallowing causes coughing. Next to pharynx, further this tube, the part is called as larynx, which is also called as voice box, and it is a hollow cartilaginous structure located at the start of your windpipe. Windpipe means trachea. So you can feel it with your fingers in front part of your neck. When you swallow something, this part rises and falls. Clear? When you touch your throat, you will feel the movement of the things going inside your trachea. The larynx contains two ligamentous folds called as vocal cords, as you can see in the diagram, and the air expelled forcibly through the vocal cords vibrate through producing the sound. So these movement of the vocal cords help in producing the sound whatever we are speaking. Next in the block, it is given the difference between voice and speech. This you can study. Voice is a sound produced by vocal cords of the larynx by the movement vibrations, and speech, it is the characters given to the voice by complex movements of lips, cheeks, and other parts of the mouth. Further to this larynx, the windpipe leads to the trachea. The trachea or the windpipe emerges from larynx down below your neck portion. Its wall, it is cartilaginous in nature. Cartilaginous means it can stretch, so it has C-shaped rings of cartilage, as you can see here in the diagram also. These rings, they are C-shaped and they make it cartilage, that is we can stretch according to the movement of the air. So these rings provide flexibility and keep the trachea distended permanently. So this is the main function why the trachea is cartilaginous. Now the next part of the respiratory tract is bronchi. Trachea further leads to a pipe which is divided into two tubes called as bronchi, and each bronchi enters into the respective lung. So here you can see in the diagram also The trachea is divided into two tubes which leads into each lung. Further, these bronchi are divided into smaller branches called as secondary bronchi, further into the tertiary bronchi. And these bronchi further divide into very minute branches which are called as bronchioles, and at the end of each bronchioles there is a sac like structure, tiny chambers which are called as alveoli. So these alveoli, they mainly are surrounded by the network of capillaries. Here in the diagram also you can see these are alveoli at the end of the bronchioles, and each alveoli is surrounded by the network of capillaries. So these capillaries, they help in the exchange of gases, because oxygenated blood is flowing inside the capillary. So oxygen they will absorb, carbon dioxide they will diffuse in the blood. So this is the main function of the alveoli. So the exchange of gases and oxygen, it occurs in the alveoli part of the respiratory tract. So here you can see the function. So oxygen from air first dissolves in a thin layer and that covers the surface of the alveoli. Here the exchange of gases takes place. Now further, alveoli are the main parts of the two main structures called as lungs. Clear? So next we are going to study about the two main respiratory passages, that is the lungs. Now the entire lining of larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles is formed of ciliated epithelium which contains small minute hair-like structure. So constantly they are in motion, they are moving to trap the dust particles which enter inside the respiratory tract. Next is the structure of the lungs. The lungs are pair of spongy elastic organs formed by air sacs which are connected by the bronchioles, blood vessels, etc. They are cone shaped. The left lung has 2 lobes and the right lung has 3. So as you can see here in the diagram, these are the lobes. Like the left lung is divided into the 2 lobes and the right lung is divided into 3 lobes. Clear? And conical they are in shape. So this is the main structure of the lungs. Now the lungs, they are covered by 2 main membranes. The inner one is called as visceral pleura. The membrane of lungs is called as pleura membrane. Inner one is visceral, outer one is parietal pleura. And the gaps between these 2 membranes, they are filled with a fluid called as pleural fluid, which acts as a shock absorber, and it also provides lubrication while expanding and contraction of the lungs. So lungs occupy the greater part of thoracic cavity as they are located on the inner surface of thoracic walls. So this is the main structure. Here you mainly have to revise or learn the names of the membranes which are covering the lungs. Inner one is visceral and outer one is parietal. In between them we have the lubricating fluid called as pleural fluid. So this was the structure of the respiratory tract. Clear? So diagram is also important. You should know all the parts of it and main functions of each organ of the respiratory tract. Thank you.